Hi everyone, and welcome to this presentation on how to prepare and how to know when you are ready for graduate programs. Some of the topics that we are going to be discussing today include a brief introduction of myself, figuring out how exactly to choose a program, how to know when you are ready, how to apply for a program. We're going to briefly talk about gap years, and then at the end of this presentation, I will provide my contact information so that you can contact me if you have any further questions. My name is Adessa Flack, and I am a doctoral student at Westchester University. I also completed my master's in clinical psychology program at Westchester University, so it's safe to say I'm pretty well versed in Westchester. So how exactly do we go about choosing a program? The first step is to consider what type of work you're hoping to do in the future. If you hope to practice as a clinician, that is, see clients, you'll need your licensure. In order to receive your licensure in Pennsylvania, you need to attend a program that has APA accreditation. You'll see here that I've included a link that you can follow to see what programs have APA accreditation. The next thing to consider is what type of program you're going to require in order to reach your goals. So some work you can complete a master's degree and you don't need any further education to do that career, whereas other goals will require further degrees, including a doctorate degree. So in terms of master's programs, you can receive a Master of the Arts, or an MA, or a Master of the Sciences, MS, degree in the following programs, including IO Psychology, also known as Industrial Organizational Psychology, General Psychology, or Clinical Psychology. In terms of doctoral programs, you can receive a Doctorate of Philosophy, also known as a PhD, or a Doctorate in Psychology, also known as a PsyD. I'm in the PsyD program at Westchester. So what exactly is Industrial Organizational Psychology? So this degree allows you to focus on human behavior in the workplace and organizational settings. So with this degree, you could do things like apply psychological research to the workplace, work within human resource offices, help businesses hire more qualified employees, help train and motivate the workforce, assess job performance, improve organizational structure, improve quality of life for employers and employees, ease transitions such as big corporate mergers, study consumer behavior, or you can work as a consultant. In terms of education and the general track for a degree in IO Psychology, they typically are 2-year programs, and certification from the American Board of Organizational and Business Consulting Psychology is required. And in some states, you will also require licensure, which involves taking a licensure exam. In terms of a degree in general psychology, this is a broader degree which has research and clinical components. If you have a degree in general psychology, you can work in fields like forensic psychology, health psychology, educational psychology, occupational psychology, counseling psychology, neuropsychology, sports and exercise psychology, and academia, such as research and training. So as you can see, a degree in general psychology can provide you with pathways for a multitude of different careers. In terms of the general education and track for a degree in general psychology, it typically is a 2-year program. And it's important to note that a doctorate degree is needed if your goal is to be a general psychologist. In terms of workload and courses, it might be important to note that a thesis is typically required for completion of this degree. In terms of a degree in clinical psychology, this is a more focused degree, and it specifically focuses on clinical work. Individuals with a clinical psychology degree can do things like become a clinical mental health counselor, a behavioral analyst, you can become a correctional counselor, a marriage and family therapist, you can be a clinical psychologist, and so on and so forth. So if you have a master's degree in clinical psychology, you can actually see clients at the master's level. This typically is a 2-year program with 48 credits being the requirement. However, in order to get your LPC, which is that licensure at the master's level, you actually need 60 total credits, which means that you will need to take an additional 12 credits outside of the typical program. Degrees in clinical psychology also involve clinical practicum experiences, and some programs will require either a comprehensive exam, a thesis, or both. So what about social work or counselor education degrees? I want to briefly touch on both of these degrees because they do have some similarities to psychology degrees, however they are different. So a degree in social work, they typically are 2-year programs. Licensure is required, and there are 2 different types of licensures in the state of Pennsylvania that you can pursue. A degree in social work requires 900 hours of field work. And individuals who obtain a degree in social work tend to work with individuals, groups, and communities that are marginalized, oppressed, or impoverished. Individuals with a degree in social work can work in a variety of settings like hospitals, community mental health services, child welfare, housing, nonprofits, public advocacy, research, and so much more. A degree in counselor education, on the other hand, is typically a 2-year program. Licensure is required since you are going to be actively practicing and seeing clients. They typically require 700 hours of fieldwork, and you will find yourself taking coursework in both psychology and school counseling. An individual with this degree can be a professional school counselor in preschool and kindergarten through 12th grade settings. You can also be a counselor in other environments like drug and alcohol facilities, behavioral health facilities, and so much more. So as you can see, there's a lot of overlap between these 2 degrees and psychology degrees. Both of these programs, I do also want to note, are offered at Westchester University. Now I'm going to talk about PhD and PsyD programs. Both of these degrees are doctorate degrees, however, there are some fundamental differences that are very important to talk about. With PhD programs, there typically is a lot of funding available, so it's not uncommon to find most, if not all, of your program to be completely covered. In PsyD programs, on the other hand, sometimes there is funding available, and in order to receive funding, it usually requires some kind of work, such as doing graduate assistantship work or teaching assistantship work. PhD programs take approximately 5 to 7 years to complete, whereas a PsyD program typically takes 4 to 5 years to complete. PhD programs are more focused on research, and they tend to use the scientist-practitioner model, whereas PsyD programs are more focused on clinical training. PhD programs and PsyD programs are both competitive. However, I would argue that PhD programs are considerably more competitive and have more rigorous criteria. If you have a PhD, this degree would enable you to do research or pursue a career in academia, among other things. PsyD programs have comprehensive exams, and some programs, such as the program at Westchester University, also requires the completion of a dissertation. If you enroll in a PsyD program, you will also be doing clinical practicums, external practicums, and completing the APIC internship. This degree would enable you to do clinical related work. So how exactly do you know if you're ready to apply to a graduate program? I have 3 quick questions here that you can ask yourself. The first being, do I have an idea of the work I'd like to do in the future? Do I have a sense of the type of degree that I need to do this work? And can I currently put together a competitive application for admission to that type of degree program? What exactly do you need for applications? It's important to ensure that you have experiences, and this can include things like clinical experiences, research experiences, or actual work experiences. You will also need academic work, including transcripts and GRE scores, which I'll talk about shortly. And in terms of the general materials that you will need for applications, you'll need a CV, a personal statement, and letters of recommendation. It's also important to note that some programs will also have some short essay prompts for you to complete, and this is necessary to complete in order to apply to that program. Clinical experience is particularly important if you are applying to a PsyD program. I've included a few different avenues you can look in order to gain some additional clinical experience. The first is hospital websites. You can often go on hospital websites and look up the keyword volunteer to find some opportunities to volunteer, whether that be through programming that the hospital has or any other type of clinical experiences that you might have available for students. You can also be a research assistant. You can look at local university websites and see if they have any opportunities available to be a research assistant. Career services websites are also a great place to look. A lot of internships and volunteer opportunities are posted on job and career services websites. So you'll need to look up keywords such as internship, volunteer, or practicum, and you can often find some of these experiences. Another thing to consider is webinars and online trainings. So the pandemic, of course, has made it a lot more challenging to find job and training opportunities that are in person. However, there are a lot of phenomenal webinars and online trainings available now. I personally love Nova Southeastern University's College of Psychology website. They put on tons of free webinars and trainings and also offer continuing education credits at reduced cost for students. Taking webinars and completing online trainings look great on your CV and show a willingness to continue learning in the field. So what exactly is the GRE? So this is a standardized test and it is required by most graduate programs. It's important to note that some schools require subject tests, so be sure to look at the necessary application materials required for each program to ensure you are taking the right examinations. I want to note that it is very important to make a study plan. There are a lot of free and of course paid study guides online, and honestly, I really recommend looking into them. I personally use the Magoosh guides to study and found them extremely helpful. If you're interested in the Magoosh guides, that's spelled Magoosh. The GRE tests are expensive. To take the test, it's $205, which is actually an increase from when I took the test several years ago. In addition, you will need to spend $27 each time you send your scores to individual schools after your test day. So a pro tip of mine is to have a list of schools you are applying to when you take your GRE, because on that day only, you have the ability to send your scores for free. After that, anytime you need to send your scores to a school, you'll need to pay that $27 fee. You will also need letters of recommendation. I encourage you to be mindful of who you ask to write a letter. Your volleyball coach, for example, may know you really well, but will they be able to write you a strong letter for a psychology program? It's important to have letter writers that know you well, are able to write a positive letter about you, and are familiar with the type of program you are applying to attend. So what about gap years? Gap years are essentially a one-year break that you take between your schooling. Don't be afraid to take a gap year if you want to gain more experience, save up on money for graduate school, or if you're feeling a little burned out and need a break from school. Some people take 1 or 2 classes from the university that they are hoping to attend, and this allows you to chip away at the courses needed for the degree if you're admitted into that program. It helps you figure out if you like that school as much as you think you would, and it also gets professors more familiar with who you are and your work ethic. Gap years are also great because they allow opportunities for students to connect with new mentors and supervisors who could write strong letters of recommendations for applications. And you can also learn about yourself over this time to help fine-tune your goals in terms of your overall career. I've listed a website here which can be really helpful if you're interested in taking a gap year and want to find a paid research position that could help you be more competitive in your applications. As promised, here's my contact information. You are more than welcome to contact me with any questions that you might have regarding the application process or any questions you might have regarding the presentation that I shared with you today. I want to thank you so much for joining me, and I wish you the absolute best on your application process and your journey in figuring out your future careers.